My writing journey has not been linear, so in order to explain where things come from, I've had to devise a tag in order to tell you about where I've gotten my idea from, how it's changed, and everything that kind of goes along with it. And also, why not make it a tag so y'all can join in too? Hello friends, my name is Katie and welcome back to my channel. Before we get started, I do quickly want to ask something of you lovely people who watch my channel. I'm about to have my 1-year YouTube anniversary, which is kind of wild and crazy. I actually can't believe that it's been a year that I've been on YouTube, almost. It'll be a year on the 24th. So in honor of my 1-year anniversary, I would like to do a Q&A. So if you have any questions for me, they can be writing related, personal related, anything really to do with me, anything at all, any questions for my opinion on something, any dying question you want to know, please leave them down in the comments below and I will get to them in my Q&A. And let's just get on to the video, which is the real reason why you're here. So this is what I'm calling the whipstory tag. It's like history and whip. Yeah, I know, it's a history of a work in progress tag, but my brain was like, ooh, whipstory? Maybe. I'll see what catches on. Essentially, this tag is about the evolution of your story and kind of talking about where it came from and seeing kind of the development maybe over the years that you've had this story. For me, I know I say a lot of things in relation to other things that kind of seems contradictory, so I wanted to kind of create this tag and talk about exactly where some shit has come from. And I just really wanted to talk about the Wrath King more because that is my entire life, but might as well make a tag of it. Let's get started. Question number 1. Give a brief summary or tagline for your work in progress. Past Katie did a really good job in her beta reading video of explaining and kind of talking about the summary of the Wrath King, so I'm gonna roll that clip instead of me trying to just like stumble along through a tagline. The Wrath King is a multi-POV dark high epic fantasy and book 1 of a planned duology. 2 months ago, the Wrath King cut off a tyrant's head and ended a bloody civil war. Peace arrives just before a long, brutal winter, when a brutal massacre in the heart of Azaro's capital brings a fresh wave of terror. Lucian Darkknight, a blood magician of one of the 4 houses of magic, is determined to find the murderers. Having spent the last decade learning to wield his blood as a weapon and walk in the memories of others, he uses the memory of the only survivor to unravel the mystery. Wesley Noreen, veteran and war hero, longs for nothing more than a normal life with his lover. Unfortunately, his lover is now the ruling king of Azaro and about to be wed to a northern lady. On the bachelor's weekend hunting trip, Wesley, the Wrath King, and their inner circle are attacked by an undead beast rank with dark magic. With his king injured and dying, Wesley must travel to the Silver Wastes to find a cure to save the love of his life. Lady Nola Swan arrives at the palace in Azaro with a sword on her back and an unbreakable vow to her dead father. As the sister of the future queen, she must protect the secrets that threaten to end both their lives. All she has to do is keep her sister alive and safe until the wedding. Unfortunately, an unknown adversary coils in the dark, waiting to strike. As our 3 protagonists struggle to find their footing in the bloody chaos, the god of death rises in the Silver Wastes to ruin the balance of life and magic. Number 2. When did you first get the idea for your current work in progress? So the Wrath King idea comes in 2 parts. The first would be the blood magic system, which I came up with about 5 years ago, particularly the ancient runes and the ancient language that combines magic and blood in order to create, manipulate, or bind. I've always kind of known that I wanted to have a magic system that cannot be done without intention or drive and sacrifice and sheer force of will, because I think that's really interesting, and how our own emotions and thoughts and intentions will play and manipulate that magic. That has always been a magic system I've wanted to play around with, and it really worked well with blood magic and the idea of the Wrath King. The other part of it came to me in September of 2018. I really wanted to work on a new story because I kind of hit this roadblock with my witch story at the time, which I'd been working on since July of that year, July of 2018. So I came up with this really expansive world with like 5 different kingdoms. It was about the balance of a world kind of shifting because of twin god brothers, and it was a really, really large story. It was humongous, it was expansive, and I tried to weave it all together, but I at the time did not have the experience or the knowledge of how to do that, so it failed epically. And basically I realized over time that I had come up with a lot of these cool worlds and cool concepts that would be better suited if they had their own space and their own book to flourish and really dive into the nuances of those kingdoms and of those stories. So I split it into parts, and thus the Wrath King was born. Question number 3. What were the first elements you came up with? An idea, a dream, a character, an image? The first element I came up with should be no surprise. As the title would suggest, the Wrath King was the first. I had this image of this dark-haired boy who was wearing a crown, and he was known for his fierce temper, so hence the Wrath King. Then later, sometime in 2019, probably around April or May, before I went on the Camino de Santiago, I had a mental image for these two other characters. Another boy who hated this master of magic for some reason, and a girl who had been butchered really badly and had a lot of scarring. The core of the story has always remained this really brutal and visceral world that is steeped in blood and a very black and red aesthetic, and I have an entire Pinterest board devoted to it, and that's kind of where I started with this Pinterest board. The original idea as well included this kind of cult, and it included this wasteland that had been destroyed by this magical impact, and a lot of those things still survive today in the Wrath King. Those are the things that were the first elements that I came up with when it comes to the Wrath King. Number 4, what has remained the same in your story? Almost all of the characters have remained the same, from Lucian to Resley to the Wrath King to Alara and Nola to Cassian and Calder. Like, they're all pretty much exactly the same as envisioned. Like, I still have the original larger master document with all of the worlds that I'd created in 2018, and I have the character profiles from that time, and they're pretty much exactly the same. Well, Noel's hair is a different color, but they're basically the same characters and they have the same function. They're just fleshed out, and I really worked on making the characters feel believable over the years, and of course I think I've gotten better at making characters, so they've grown into better characters, but the bare bones are still the same. Number 5, what has changed in your story and why? Oh my gosh, there's so much has changed. A lot has changed. The villains have evolved the most, and I've had to simplify a lot of my plots to keep the narrative tight. A lot of extraneous characters were cut, unfortunately, characters I still love and I'd love to put somewhere. In the current draft of the book, there is a journey that 2 of the characters go on. In the original one, there was 5. And I mean, the most obvious change is one of the original POVs was cut, as well as one of the other POVs was changed to a different character. His story still serves the same function, but he is much different and has a lot more compelling of a plotline. I also really changed the villains. The villain got a real overhaul. He used to be this scorned sailor who had lost a lot in the war and who was just generally kind of outcast and such, but now I've kind of see him as more of like if Loki and Patrick Bateman from American Psycho had a child, and then that child was corrupted by a vengeful god and promised a lot of candy. Candy being a metaphor for a kingdom, but you know, that's what's changed a lot. Question number 6. Have you started drafting yet? If so, how much have you written? How many drafts? If not, what stage of the process are you in? So yes, I will be moving into draft 4 when I get all of my beta feedback returned. I'm currently in revisions of draft 3. I just rewrote draft 3 of the Wrath King, and I hope to be querying by mid-June. We'll see how it all goes. So I'm really excited to dive into revisions on June 1st. Question number 7. How did you know who would tell the story? I have always kind of known who I want to tell the story. So I always knew I didn't want the bigger, flashier chosen one characters to be the ones who were telling the story. I didn't want the immortal mage or the king or eventual queen to be the ones telling the story. I wanted to explore the idea of a character that revolves around a character that is a legend. So I'm not as much fascinated with like King Arthur, but I'd be much more fascinated by the other knights that surround him and kind of the feelings that come along with having people in your life that are already legends and will be talked about for generations and such and such and such. I wanted to work with the characters that are on the periphery as opposed to those who eventually become heroes. And obviously these characters are heroes. They are doing stuff. They're not just observers, but they're not, you know, the ones with the cool monikers. They're not the ones, you know, who are off doing a ton of stuff. Like, they're not going to become kings and queens. And I think what's really interesting about these characters in particular is, as I have written, I found they have a lot more to lose than the actual, like, legend characters. I also needed to show different sides of the plot, and all 3 of my current POVs are really necessary for showing all those angles and creating a cohesive narrative that shows you all the nuance of every plot line. So what I really thought about was, when I'm coming up with a plot, what viewpoints will give me the best grasp on the points of the narrative that I want to emphasize. So, for example, Lucian is super important because not only does he have an interesting backstory that gives him a motivation for the book and gives a sympathetic latching point for the reader, but he also is the only character that deals directly with blood magic, and through that blood magic he gets drawn into the plot for the other ones. Wesley is really important because he's super close to the king, and he is the one who is chosen to go on this journey to try to save the king, and of course he has other stakes in it as well that are more interpersonal. And then Nola is really important because she is showing what's happening at home, and she is very much kind of this outsider who can give more of a perspective on the palace. She is the closest you can can get to like the hero or chosen one archetype, I suppose, but her plotline is also really important for a couple of other reasons that I can't tell you because of spoilers, but that is how I went about choosing who would tell the story. Question number 8. What POV and tense is/will it be written in? Has it changed over time? The Wrath King is in third person past tense, and that will never change. I don't write anything but third person past tense. Specifically for my fantasy. I did dabble a little bit with another story of third person present tense, but for the most part, I don't think I'll ever change out of past tense just because past tense is really comfortable for me and I'm used to writing in it. Question number 9. Do you have a title for your story? You can share it if you feel comfortable. When did you come up with it? If you don't have a title, do you need one before you start writing? So yes, actually, The Wrath King does have an official title that I'll be querying it under, but for now I'll continue to refer to it as The Wrath King. This was always been like the title of the book because Ronan is the Wrath King. However, he's not a main character. He's not a point of view character. I mean, he is a main character, but not a point of view character. And it does like, it is badass and it does like fit the vibes of the book, but at the same time, it's not really worth it to use this title in this book. So I've actually changed the official title to a line of dialogue in the book that fits it so much better. It actually lends itself really nicely to my second book in the duology. I already have the first book and the second book's title, and I'm really excited about that. Let me tell you, I don't need a title when I start writing. It just so happened that I used the Wrath King when I first started writing this first draft. Just kind of happened, but I don't need one, no. And question number 10, our final one. How did you know you were ready to tell the story? I didn't. I was afraid of writing it. I was kind of bullied into writing it by one of my friends from college. She was annoyed about all of my hesitation, and don't get me wrong, it was a loving annoyance. It was tough love annoyance. I've kind of come to realize over time that you're never really ready to write a book. You just kind of have to take the plunge and, you know, start working on it and see, because maybe sometimes you realize you're not ready and you stop for a while, like I did with the Eclipse project. But for the Wrath King, I'm really glad that I did, and writing the Wrath King and finishing the Wrath King gave me a ton of confidence in my own writing ability and my own dreams of being a career author, and has helped me level up my writing. I'm just really happy that in 2019 I decided to finally write this book and take the dive into it, because it also led me to AuthorTube, which I'm now celebrating a year of, and I kind of can't believe. It's wild. It's ridiculous. How did this happen? So those are all the questions. I hope you enjoyed this, learning a little bit more about the history of the Wrath King. I've had this book in my head for a really long time. It's been sizzling for a while and developing, and I'm very glad that it is very close to querying, even though I'm fucking terrified. So this is a tag, so I'm going to tag a couple of people. As always, don't feel pressure to do this tag if you don't want to, even if I tag you. And if I didn't tag you and you'd like to, feel free to do it. And if you do, please leave it down in the comments or in our Discord, or DM me the link on Instagram so I can watch you do it. So specifically the people that I would like to tag, who I would love to see a work in progress history for, is Devasia, aka Grape Fry, Wallace or Wallissimo, Somber Honey aka Danny, Caitlin Ash, While Miranda Wrote, Marta, and Crystal. Those are some people that I would like to see from. Again, no worries, no pressure. If you don't want to do it, or, you know, if you want to do it and I didn't tag you, please feel free. I've left all of the questions down below in the description box for your convenience, so you can actually see what the questions are. Again, if you have any questions for my Q&A, please leave them down below in the comments as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you gave me a thumbs up down below. It really helps and supports my channel. And if you want to see more of my rambling face, you can hit subscribe. I post new videos every single Thursday. Again, thank you so much for watching, supporting this channel, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!